following Data's surprise appearance in the Star Trek Picard trailer, and certainly following our further dissemination of Robert Meyer Burnett's report that the entire concept behind the Picard series at the very least seems, shall we say, heavily inspired by Brian Fuller's Picard and Data pitch. Many wondered, how can Data be back? Or is that B4 we are seeing? Now, if you right now in this moment instead are wondering, did Data go somewhere? And what the hell is a B4? Don't worry, I got you covered. In this video, I'll very briefly go through where Data went, what B4 is, and how the return of either in Star Trek Picard may already have been explained. If you are a hardcore Star Trek fan, then you already know this. But I know some of you watching are more casual, so let's quickly bring you guys up to speed. In 2002's Star Trek NEMESIS, the final Next Generation movie that no one but hardcore fans saw, Data dies, and in a manner which seems very final. So spoiler alert, I guess. Anyway, before Data dies, they find another, earlier, hitherto unknown android, also made by Data's creator. This is B4. He looks just like Data, but is a bit less advanced, i.e. dumber. So Data copies his neural net to him, hoping to help him out, although seemingly to no effect. After Data dies, we see the childlike B4 trying to sing the song Blue Sky like Data did at the wedding at the opening of the film. Did Data somehow survive in the neural net transfer, or is B4 learning like Data once did? That is for the viewer to determine. The movie doesn't say. Many assume that Data is dead though, which is why seeing Brent Spiner in the makeup surprised so many and left many wondering, is that B4 we are seeing because he should still be around, or is it Data? If the makers of Star Trek Picard stick to their own canon, which I'm not saying they will, but if they do, it should be Data. Before we go into how it can be Data, let's go into how we can know. When J.J. Abrams and Bad Robot first came aboard the Star Trek franchise, it was with the explicit intention of creating a transmedia franchise. One new Star Trek going forward on film, on TV, in comics, in books, and in video games. And by one Star Trek, I mean one Star Trek, as all of those would be part of the same canon, only explored different aspects of it. However, these grandiose plans could never be realized in earnest, because of the rights situation. Bad Robot were producing Star Trek on behalf of Paramount. But Paramount didn't own Star Trek, CBS did, and still does. Paramount could only do what their Star Trek license issued to them by CBS allowed, which wasn't nearly as much as they would have liked, while CBS were still cashing in on merchandise based on the original Star Trek, something which undercut Paramount and Bad Robot's efforts to establish a new Star Trek. In the end, it was frustration over this that led to Abrams moving on to Star Wars and the plans of one unified Star Trek on film, on TV, in comics, in books, and in video games, being scaled back to one Star Trek on film, in comics, and in one video game, which really didn't work out the way they had intended. So you're left with the movies and the comics, which increasingly started moving away from the movies around the time of Star Trek Beyond. But up until then, the movies and the comics did indeed take place within the same continuity, cross-referencing each other. By that I don't mean cross-referencing the way Marvel has done it so far between film and TV, where say Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. references the movies, but the movies couldn't care less about whatever goes on in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. No, where Star Trek is concerned, both the 2009 movie, but especially Into Darkness, contain explicit references to the comics, cementing them as canon. The way this happened was by movie writers and producers Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci, keeping comic book writer Mike Johnson and his sometimes writing partner Tim Jones in the loop of what they were doing in the movies and what kind of backstories they had in mind, so Johnson could sync it all up with the release schedule of the comics, making them interlock with the movies. The comics even referenced the video game and where that fits into continuity. These comics are something of a mixed bag. Some are bland, but some are really good. They're all available to read in paperback format, but the one which may hold particular significance to the Picard series and the proverbial return of Data is Countdown. Star Trek Countdown is written by Mike Johnson and Tim Jones, but the story is by Robert Orci and Alex Kurtzman, because this is their intended canon backstory for Star Trek 09. In it, we learn that Federation Ambassador Spock has spent the past 20 years residing on Romulus, and he tries to warn the Romulan Senate that the Hobus star will soon go supernova in a manner never before seen, which threatens especially the Romulan homeworld but also the galaxy at large. He is not believed by anyone but Nero of the Mining Guild, with the Romulan Senate proving themselves to be a right bunch of nitwits. Nero and Spock decide to take matters into their own hands for the good of Romulus. Traveling in the Narada, Spock, Nero and the crew are later attacked by the Remans, but rescued by the USS Enterprise E and her legendary captain, Data. Later, we learn that Data's return is due to the imprinting of his neural nets onto B4, which we saw in Star Trek NEMESIS having been successful. It would therefore appear that in Alex Kurtzman and Robert Orci's interpretation of Star Trek canon, Data's memories and personality were successfully installed in B4's body. Later, they're also joined by Ambassador Picard. But even with Picard's help, it all goes to hell. The Hobus star explodes. The Romulan homeworld goes down in flames. Nero and his crew tattoo grief marks on their skin. The Narada gets a Borg upgrade. Spock sacrifices himself to save the rest of the galaxy. The Narada goes after him, and boom, the Kelvin timeline is born. That, then, was the, at the time, canon backstory for the 2009 movie. But will it still be canon for Star Trek Picard? It would appear that Brian Fuller treated Countdown as canon for his initial Picard and Data pitch. And since Kurtzman came up with the story alongside Robert Orci, it is not a stretch to imagine he sees it as canon as well. But it is Michael Chabon, not Alex Kurtzman, that is the showrunner on Star Trek Picard. And if he, or Amazon for that matter, they're a power player now too, wants to treat Countdown as canon, or come up with another backstory, we do not yet know. But if there is an intention to bring Data back, now you know how that's already been done within the canon of the alternate Star Trek. But whether or not that will be allowed to remain canon, or be assigned to fan fiction, depends on what they do on screen in Star Trek Picard. What do you think they will do? Let me know in the comments.
If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a comment, like it, and help share it. Or if you didn't, tell us why in the comments. If you did enjoy it, then feel free to subscribe, but remember to hit the bell icon to select that you want notifications all the time, otherwise YouTube might randomly unsubscribe you. Midnight's Edge is completely independent and devoted to bringing you the intelligent analysis of the inner workings of the film industry and genre media. If you like what we do, then we would be very grateful if you could help us keep the lights on by supporting us on Patreon or on Subscribestar. Our backers receive exclusive rewards and bonuses. Before you go, check out these other videos that may interest you, and our sister channel Midnight's Edge After Dark for more live shows and more laid-back content.